Hello friends, welcome you all to the topic Constitutional Provisions for Education in India. Literacy is always considered as a major problem faced by many countries, especially the developing ones. It is so because education is identified as a major cause of socio-economic and ethnic conflicts in a country. Thus, most of the countries in the world have accepted their obligation to provide free education at least in the elementary level for their citizens. Article 26 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights declares thus: everyone has the right to education. Education shall be free at least in the elementary and fundamental stages. Elementary education shall be compulsory. Technical and professional education shall be generally available, and higher education shall be equally accessible to all on the basis of merit. The same has been declared in the UN Declaration of Rights of the Child also. This seeks to ensure right to free and compulsory education at least in the elementary stages, and education to promote general culture, abilities, judgment and sense of responsibility to become a useful member of society, an opportunity to recreation and play to attain the same purpose as of education. India has ratified the same and has included a number of provisions in its constitution which have direct or indirect bearing on education. The Constitution of India gives a few directions and suggestions for the development of education in the country. Right to education is one of the fundamental rights enshrined in the Constitution of India. Education in India is provided by both public sector and private sector. The control and funding for education comes from three levels: central, state and local. Education in India falls under control of both the central government and the state government. This vital document was adopted on 26 November 1949 and came into force on 26 January 1950. It being the largest constitution in the whole world has also included provisions which have direct or indirect bearing on education in India. Articles relating to education in the Constitution of India. Various provisions have been made in the Constitution relating to education in India. These provisions have been made in the form of articles. The articles of Indian Constitution also provide for education as fundamental right and relate to the 7 aspects of Indian education, which are as follows: equality before law, religious instructions, interests of the minorities, free and compulsory primary education, education of SC, ST and other weaker sections, medium of instruction at primary stage and center state relation relating to education. Equality before law. There are various provisions made in the Constitution to secure equality to all its citizens, including children in the age group of 6 to 14. Article 14 of the Constitution states that the state shall not deny to any person equality before law or the equal protection of the laws within the territory of India. Article 15 clause 2 of the Indian Constitution states that the state on grounds of religion, race, caste, sex, place of birth or any of them shall not discriminate against any Indian citizen. Article 16 provides equality of opportunity in matters of public employment, which also has indirect implication for providing equality of educational opportunity to all children in the age group of 6 to 14. Religious instructions. The articles in the Constitution relating to religious instructions include Article 28 clause 1, which clearly states that the Constitution of India does not allow any religious instruction to be provided in any educational institution wholly maintained out of the state funds. Article 28 clause 2 mentioned that any educational institution which has been established under any endowment or trust can impart religious instruction. Article 28 clause 3 in continuation of the above said article, which allow any educational institution under any trust to impart religious instruction, but with a clause which says that if the educational institution imparts religious instruction, then no student in that institution shall be forced to take part in such religious instruction or forced to attend religious worship in that institution. According to our Constitution, Article 28 provides freedom as to attend at religious instruction or religious worship in education institutions. Interests of minorities. Provisions that have been made to protect the interests of the minorities include articles such as the following. Article 29 provides equality of opportunity in education institutions. Article 30 accepts the right of the minorities to establish and administrate educational institutions. Article 337 provides for special provision with respect to educational grants for the benefit of Anglo-Indian community. Free and compulsory primary education. Article 45. According to this article, the state shall endeavour to provide within a period of 10 years from the commencement of this Constitution for free and compulsory education for all children until they complete the age of 14 years. Education of SC/ST and other weaker sections. Article 46 provides for special care to the promotion of education and economic interests of the scheduled castes, scheduled tribes and other weaker sections of the society. The article states that the state shall promote with special care the educational and economic interests of the weaker sections of the people and in particular of the SC and ST, and shall protect them from social injustice and all forms of exploitation. Medium of instruction at primary stage. Article 350 specifies on the medium of instruction in an educational institution. Article 350A stress on the facility of the educational institutions to provide instruction in mother tongue at primary stage. Article 350B provides for a special offer for linguistic minorities. Center and state relations relating to education. In the 7th schedule, as per Article 246 of the Indian Constitution, there is a division of powers between center and the state. There are 3 lists of power: the union list, the state list and the concurrent list. The union list relates to the power of the central government, the state list relates to the power of the state and the concurrent list relates to the power of both the center and the state. The union list. The list contains 97 subjects where the following entries are related to education. Entry 13 relates to the power of the state to provide educational and cultural relations with foreign countries. Entry 62, this entry states that the institutions such as National Library, the Indian Museum, the Imperial War Museum, the Victoria Memorial, Indian War Memorial or any other such institutions will be financed by the Government of India wholly or in part, and such institutions will be declared by the Parliament by law to be an institution of national importance. Entry 63 is a continuation of the previous entry in the Constitution and states that institutions such as the Banaras Hindu University, Aligarh Muslim University and Delhi University will also be declared by Parliament by law to be institutions of national importance. As per entry 64, the institutions IITs and IIMs will also be institutes of national importance according to the Constitution, and such scientific and technical education will be financed by the Government of India wholly or in part. Entry 65 states that the union list under the power of the state government will have agencies and institutions which are related to the following: professional, vocational or technical training including the training of police officers, the promotion of special studies or research, scientific or technical assistance in the investigation of detection of crime. Entry 66, the entry states that the state government will have the sole responsibility for the coordination and determination of standards in the institution of higher education or research and scientific and technical institutions. State list. State list consists of 66 entries. Out of the 66, the following is the entry related to education. As per entry 12, all libraries, museums and other similar institutions controlled or financed by the state, ancient and historical monuments and records other than those declared by or under law made by the Parliament to be of the national importance. Concurrent list. It comprises 47 entries. Among them, the following are related to education. Entry 20 says that the issues related to economic and social planning will be the responsibility of both the centre and the state. According to entry 25, both the centre and state will have to take responsibility of power with respect to education, including technical education, medical education and universities, subject to provision of entries 63, 64, 65 and 66 in the union list. Entry 34 maintains that the issues regarding newspapers, books and printing presses is also a part of the concurrent list, where the power relates to centre and state. Reservation of constitutional provisions in education. Education of minorities. The expression minority means a group comprising less than half of the population and differing from others, especially the predominant section. The Constitution of India uses the word minority in many of the articles related to education. The word minority in article 29 refers to any section of citizens having a distinct language, script or culture. Article 30 specifies two categories of minority, such as religious and linguistic. Provisions for the education of the minorities is included in article 28 of the Constitution, which says that no religious instruction shall be provided in educational institutions wholly maintained out of state funds. The specifications in clause 1 shall apply to an education institution which has been established under any endowment or trust. If such institution requires such an instruction, they shall impart the same. No person attending an education institution recognized by the state or receiving funds from the state government shall be forced to take part in any religious worship or instruction that may be conducted in such institutions or in any premises attached thereto. Admissions. Article 29 clause 2 states that no citizen of India can be denied admission into any educational institution which is either maintained by the state or receiving aid out of state funds on ground only of religion, race, caste, language or any of them. Article 15 clause 3 states special provisions for women to be made. As part of such an idea, separate education institutions for women can be established. Cultural and educational rights. Article 29 and 30 are made for the protection of educational interests of minorities. Article 29 clause 1 explains the meaning of minority group as any section of citizen residing in the territory of India or any part thereof having a distinct language, script or culture of its own. As per Article 30 clause 1, all minorities, whether based on religion or language, shall have the right to establish and administer education institutions of their choice. Article 30 clause 1a says that the state shall provide financial aid for the compulsory acquisition of any property of any educational institutions established and administered by minorities. In Article 30 clause 3, there should be no discrimination against any education institution on the ground that it is under the management of a minority or whether based on religion or language. Mother tongue. For promotion of teaching of mother tongue, the Constitution of India has made some provisions for Hindi language. As per Article 350A, it is important that a state and local authorities with the state should provide adequate facilities for instruction in the mother tongue at the primary stage of education to children belonging to linguistic minority groups. Not only this, the President may issue directions to any state if he considers it necessary for recurring the facilities for education. Article 351 aims to promote the development of Hindi language and states that it shall be the duty of the central government to promote the spread of Hindi language in the entire country. Weaker sections. Our Constitution has made some special provisions for the weaker sections of our society, which are included in Article 45 and Article 46 and discussed in the earlier sections. Right to education. Article 41 of the Constitution provides that all the citizens have equal right to education. It states the state shall, within the limits of its economic capacity and development, make effective provisions for the right to work, to education and to public assistance in cases of employment, old age, sickness and disablement. Right to Education Act or RTE and compulsory education. Background of the Act. Education is the foundation for the development of a society, and thus the Indian government lays emphasis on primary education up to 14 years, which is referred to as elementary education in India. In the year 1950, India made a constitutional commitment to provide free and compulsory education to all children up to the age of 14. This was done by adding this provision in Article 45 of the Directive Principles of State Policy. In the 86th Amendment Act, the Constitution in 2002 inserted Article 21A to provide free and compulsory education of all children in the age group of 6 to 14 years as a fundamental right. To implement this act, the state took appropriate laws, and education being included in the concurrent list, it was decided that the laws will be enacted either by the union or the states. By the same amendment, in Article 45, a directive principle relating to free and compulsory education for children was replaced. This new Article 45 directs the state to provide childhood care and education to children below the age of 6. The 86th Amendment had added one more fundamental duty to Article 51A, which states that every guardian or parent has the duty to provide educational opportunities to his child or ward between the ages of 6 to 14 years. Later, Right to Education Bill 2005 was introduced. The rough draft of the bill was done, which received much opposition due to its mandatory provision to provide 25% reservation for disadvantaged children in private schools. The bill was later approved by the Cabinet on 2nd July 2009. It received presidential assent and was notified as law on 26 August 2009. The Right of Children to Free and Compulsory Education or RTE Act finally came into force on 1st April 2010. The main advantages by the enforcement of this act would be to tackle issues of school dropout, out of school children, quality of education, availability of trained teachers, etc. Free education in the RTE Act means that no child other than a child who has been admitted by his or her parents to a school which is not supported by the appropriate government shall be liable to pay any kind of fee or charges or expenses which may prevent him or her from pursuing and completing elementary education. Major provisions of the Act. Right of children to free and compulsory education till completion of elementary education in a neighborhood school. No child shall be liable to pay any kind of fee or charges or expenses which may prevent him or her from pursuing and completing elementary education. It clarifies that compulsory education means obligation of the appropriate government to provide free elementary education. It will also ensure compulsory admission, attendance and completion of elementary education to every child in the 6 to 14 age groups. The Act has provisions for a child above 6 years of age who has not been admitted to any school or who could not complete his or her elementary education to be admitted in a class appropriate to his or her age. For the purpose of admission to the elementary education, the age of the child shall be determined on the basis of birth certificate issued in accordance with the provisions of the birth. No child shall be denied admission in a school for lack of age proof. A child who completes elementary education shall be awarded a certificate. The Act mandates that even private education institutions have to reserve 25% seat for children from the weaker sections. It specifies the duties and responsibilities of appropriate governments local authority and parents in providing free and compulsory education. The central and the state governments shall have concurrent responsibility for providing funds for carrying out the provisions of this Act. It also provides for rational deployment of teachers. This can be done by ensuring that the specified pupil teacher ratio is maintained for each school. The Act also emphasizes on appointment of appropriately trained teachers. In case there are no trained teachers, the school will have to comply with the provision within 3 years. It prohibits physical punishment and mental harassment of the child, screening procedures for admission of children in school, acceptance of capitation fee, running of schools without recognition, etc. It provides for development of curriculum which would ensure the all-round development of the child, building on the child's knowledge, potentiality and talent and making the child free of fear, trauma and anxiety through a system of child-friendly and child-centered learning. It is also compulsory that the school also should adequate playground and infrastructure. The Indian government has already shown its ability by providing adequate funds of rupees 1.71 lakhs crores for compulsory education that comes under the RTE Act. The government has also plans to open model schools rather than introducing common school system and hence a multi-layered education system to devise rich and poor children. The government is planning to open 6,000 model schools with the partnership of private sector. The term compulsory education gives different meaning and interpretation like mandatory attendance requirements. Many people feel that right to education and compulsory education are the same, but the truth is that there is a slight difference between the two. The right to education can be applicable to the adults also. The aim of compulsory education is to protect children's right to education because they have no way of asserting that right for themselves when through neglect or ignorance no attention is paid to this need. In order to make education compulsory under these acts, a number of further actions should be involved such as preparation of a scheme by specified authority to make education compulsory in an area, obtaining government approval for the scheme and the notification of a scheme of compulsion within the specified area. Although many acts for free and compulsory education were introduced with great enthusiasm in India both before and after independence, this enthusiasm for education of masses was not shared by all. The National Commission for Protection of Child Rights NCPCR has been designated as the agency to monitor the provisions of the Act. The National Commission for Protection of Child Rights was set up in March 2007 under the Commission for Protection of Child Rights Act 2005. The Commission takes special care to ensure that all laws, policies, programs and administrative mechanisms are in consonance with the child rights perspective as enshrined in the Constitution of India. As per the provisions of the RTE Act, the central government has authorized the National Council of Educational Research and Training or NCERT as the academic authority to lay down the curriculum and evaluation procedure for elementary education and develop a framework of national curriculum. Let me summarize the session. Education is identified as a major cause of socio-economic and ethnic conflicts in a country, and thus most of the countries in the world have accepted their obligation to provide free education at least in the elementary level for their citizens. India has imbibed the same concept and has included a number of provisions in its constitution which have direct or indirect bearing on education. These provisions have been made in the form of articles. The important articles relating to education is elaborately discussed in this session. The Indian government lays emphasis on primary education up to 14 years, which is referred to as elementary education in India. In the year 1950, India made a constitutional commitment to provide free and compulsory education to all children up to the age of 14. This was done by adding this provision in Article 45 of the Directive Principles of State Policy. The 86th Amendment had added one more fundamental duty to Article 51A, which states that every guardian or parent has the duty to provide educational opportunities to his child or ward between the ages of 6 to 14 years. Later, Right to Education Bill 2005 was introduced. The Right of Children to Free and Compulsory Education or RTE Act finally came into force on 1st April 2010. The major provisions of this Act is further discussed in detail. Now, you can try to answer the following questions. Which are the articles that have been made to protect the interests of the minorities? What does Article 26 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights declare? Which are the educational provisions that have been made to protect the interests of the minorities? Which article of the Constitution focus on promotion of teaching of mother tongue? What are the provisions included in the right of children to free and compulsory education? Which is the agency designated to monitor the provisions of the right to education or RTE? Now, you can go through the reference books given here. Education in India, Problems and Perspectives by M. Dash, published by Atlantic Publishers and Distributors, New Delhi in the year 2004. History of Education in India by Ramnath Sharma and Rajendra Kumar Sharma, published by Atlantic Publishers and Distributors in 1996. Thank you for watching the program. We can meet again with another topic soon. Till then, take care.